Hey everyone, I'm Nathan, and welcome to my speed draw. So, Wizards of the Coast has released playtest material called One D&D, which is a streamlining and reimagining of 5th edition's Dungeons & Dragons. This will most likely be released as its own book as a 5.5 edition or 6th edition. There are lots of changes to the core rules that were released, like ability scores being linked to background instead of race, but that's a topic for another day. These new rules inspired Moondragon Draws to design 3 characters of the new playable fantasy race, the Ardlings. I really loved her take of the Ardling, and it just looked like so much fun I wanted to do it myself. So I decided that I would draw my own trio of Ardlings and their own adventuring party. Without further ado, let's get into the speed draw. 3, 2, 1. Alright, so whenever I make a character in my head, I always have the most fun drawing them when I can think of a context to put them in. I don't really like drawing, well, sometimes to figure out a design, I will just have them in 3/4 view, standing straight, so I know what they look like, but most of the time, I have the most fun when I can put a character in a context. Like, I enjoy imagining their personality and why they're here and what they're doing. So I'd like to imagine this is a fairly new adventuring party. They haven't found their groove as a team yet, but they're all kind of collectively working to just not fuck up their mission. I put them in a heist? Yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like a good scenario to put them in. And it was going pretty okay until they realized they had to just get through a door that's locked, and none of them are rogues, so they're just doing their best. You can kind of see the cat girl who's trying to pick the lock. I like to imagine that she's not a rogue, that she's more of a monk or something. We're in the middle of our 3rd campaign in my home game. Our first one was pirate-themed, our second one was more just traditional, vaguely medieval, adventure-timey, kind of goofy Dungeons & Dragons, and our 3rd one is Greek-themed, so needless to say, I've had goddesses and gods and just celestial beings on my mind a lot. There's not enough celestial monsters for people to fight. I remember buying, Mythic Guide to Theranos, I think it is, and I was really disappointed that none of the gods in that book came with a stat block. They were just kind of these humongous pieces of landscape that move and are extremely powerful, but yet you could interact with them, like they have a personality, like they're real people, but I don't know, it's like, how are we gonna fight them? How does this work? I don't know, it's just kind of disappointing. So I've basically been thinking a lot about descendants and demigods and stuff like that. So it was a little weird with Ardlings because tieflings are descended from devils and ASMR descended from angels. That's very self-explanatory. They're kind of, I don't know, they're supposed to be children of gods, and they take a lot of inspiration from composite creatures. Like, they all have these animal heads. Kind of based each of these 3 characters off of different celestial legacies. Moon talks all about all of this in her video. I highly recommend y'all just go check it out if you want more in-depth stuff. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I think these guys could be pretty popular, like the same way in most fan art, tieflings have really, people kind of go gaga over their horns and decorating them and putting rings or jewelries. I can imagine with this little elephant person, I don't know, I gave them very small tusks. That was actually one of the struggles. You saw me draw them with large tusks and I shrink them, but I could imagine decorating tusks the same way you decorate horns. I feel like there's a lot of potential there just for interesting and unique character designs. And also you just have so many you could do any animal head to play with. So I like that aspect too. D&D is getting really into the planes, so they like explaining this with, oh, Ardlings are descendants from the upper planes, and tieflings are descended from the lower planes, and the ASMR are only from one particular upper plane. But in my game, we never play with planes. That's just not something that happens. I don't know. I'm not interested in it as a DM. If any of my players were like, yo, I really want to do a planescapey thing, I would research it for them. But none of them have showed any interest in the planes just as a concept. And what I have read of them is just kind of confusing and doesn't really match the flavors of my playstyle or the kind of worlds that we build whenever we play together. So yeah. I don't know, I would much rather it just be more refined, that it's Ardlings are just descended from gods, and you can make that non-Judeo-Christian centered, and I love that they're more composite creature-based, because there are a lot of religions and folklores and belief systems that do not look anything like biblical angels. But if you're gonna have your typical demons depicted as the tieflings, then there should be a stereotypical angel depicted in the ASMR just so you have that flavor. In fact, I think that, wizards could really lean into the biblically accurate angels. If you've ever seen those memes online or just have read about them, they are so scary and so interesting. I could really go on and on about biblically accurate angels. I think they're so wacky. Oh, quick flash warning, I always go a little overboard on the adjustment layers. They're kind of baked into my coloring process as a digital artist. I don't know, I feel like I use them way earlier than most people do. Like most artists I see on here, kind of like they do everything and they do the whole penciling, sketching, inking, coloring, and then when it's all completely finished, they do adjustment layers last. And I still kind of mostly follow that order, but sometimes I use adjustment layers like really, really early on. I think because I do struggle with color. I love coloring, but I feel like it's one of my weaker areas. Just because there's so many possibilities, and sometimes I like things to be very desaturated and low contrast. And saturation and contrast makes things interesting, so I have to get outside of my comfort zone. But yeah, the Genasi are supposed to be descended of Jinn/genies, which are supposed to be from the elemental planes, but like I said, I don't really understand planes. If any of you guys are plane experts and want to like explain it down below, I don't know how many people are gonna watch this video because it's coming out very late. But yeah, if anyone wants to just explain planes to me, I would greatly appreciate it. But from like a religious perspective, the idea of jinn comes from pre-Islamic Arabia, and then they are literally a very big element of Islam. Like, they're seemed kind of very similar to demons, but they can be malevolent or, kind. I just think it's interesting. Like, I feel like Genie have their very particular role in what they're supposed to do in the world of D&D, and they're supposed to represent the elements, which is a unique flavor. So we know what the Genasi are. They're like the elemental people. There should be more comparison. Like, the Ardlings kind of need to be treated like that. Like, tieflings, demon people, ASMR, angel people, Genasi, genie people, and then Ardlings are god people. Does that make sense? Or am I just rambling? I hope that makes sense, because in my mind I'm like, it's perfect. Anyway, that was the longest tangent. I'm so sorry. I could literally talk about all of this forever, but like I said, each character is based on a different culture. So the elephant-headed person is based off of Ganesha, the deity from the Hindu pantheon, which is why they're like wearing dhoti pants. I made them pink. Ganesha is like a god who removes obstacles and brings good luck. So I like to imagine, like, in the heist, the elephant has the biggest ears, and the reason they're looking over their shoulder is perhaps they hear something, and I kind of gave them this expression of like, oh guys, someone's coming. Like, they're aware that they're about to get caught and they need to like rush. The big guy in the middle was inspired by a Slavic deity, which I couldn't find one pronunciation. I found two. One was Eels, and the other one was Velas. I don't know, it could be a third pronunciation. It's spelled V-E-L-A-S. Basically, this is from Slavic mythology. He was depicted as having either a bear or a wolf head, and sometimes he was just depicted as a dragon. He was this god of the earth, of water, livestock, and the underworld. When I was just reading about him online, he had a spear, and so I was like, maybe this guy's a fighter. I gave him a spear, and I did the bear instead of the wolf. Seemed kind of more interesting. I had a lot of trouble figuring out what style to do the bear's head in, because it's really easy with this to kind of go into, it just looks like a person wearing a fake mask over their head. But yeah, just kind of having a very intentional style. The last character, the cat girl, she's obviously inspired by Bastet, or Bast, the goddess from Egyptian mythology. I think this is like the most stereotypical, straightforward thing I could have done, but I just really wanted to because I really loved the Came Chronicles. Alright, I think we're nearing the end. I redraw this arm because I showed this to my roommate and she was like, arm looked weird, and I was like, dang it, you're right. I have to redo this whole thing now. But I like to imagine they each come from, these very different cultures, and one thing they all had in common was being Ardlings, and so they all formed a team, and they're just trying to get through this door. And I hope it works out for them. I add some glow. And yeah, this is the end results. I'm super happy with how it turned out. Loved all of this architectural detailing. Actually funny, I've been trying to get this video out ever since I watched Moon's video, and at the time of recording, the new D&D Unearthed Arcana came out for the expert classes, which has nothing to do with races, but it has to do on the rogue, the ranger, and the bard. So I'm like, oh gosh, I should have done a video with those 3 classes instead, so this would be relevant. But I don't know, maybe I'll be able to get that video out before next month's Unearthed Arcana comes out. And yeah, I guess that's it. If you like this video and listening to me just ramble on about random Dungeons and Dragons things, feel free to subscribe. I upload every Wednesday and Saturday. Like the bell. And if you really want to support me, feel free to click the link below and follow me on Patreon, or head over to Twitter. My commissions are open if you want me to draw your Ardlings or any D&D character. Once again, I'm Nathan. Remember to check out Moon's video below, link in the description, and I'll see you soon. Bye!